Last autumn, I decided to escape the chaos of city life and set my sights on a secluded island known for its dense haunting woods, Tranquil Isle. I was drawn to its reputation for isolation, a haven where I could unravel among the whispers of nature. I arrived on October 12th, 2022, leaving the ferry behind as the sun set on the horizon, casting eerie shadows over the trees. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, a sudden chill wrapping around my shoulders as I walked toward the rented cabin, a quaint wooden structure that felt oddly alive amidst the towering trees. The owner had told me I'd be the only guest. It sounded perfect. As I settled into the cabin, I noticed the way the wind rustled through the leaves, almost like a conversation in a foreign language. The cabin was small but cozy, with wooden beams and a fireplace that would crackle to life in the evening chill. A single window looked out into the dark woods, and I could see the treetops swaying as twilight deepened. I sighed with relief, feeling my stress ebb away. However, the air had an unnatural quietness, like the island was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the silence. It felt wrong, an unsettling calm that settled like a weight on my chest. That first night, I decided to explore a bit before falling asleep. The moon bathed the path in silvery light, guiding my steps as I wandered deeper into the woods. The trees towered like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches wrapping around each other, creating an almost cathedral-like ambiance. I could hear every crack of a twig beneath my feet and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. But as I ventured further, I started to hear something else, an unearthly wailing, far off yet eerily close. I froze, my heart pounding as that heart-wrenching sound echoed through the trees. It was a cry so filled with sorrow that it sent shivers down my spine, compelling me to move closer, despite my instincts screaming to turn back. I felt drawn as though the woods were beckoning me closer. Just as I was about to push deeper into the darkness, I noticed a flickering light in the distance. My curiosity piqued. I trod forward, the wailing growing louder and more insistent with each step, mixing with the rustling of the wind through the branches. What I found was shocking. The remnants of an old campfire surrounded by stones, the ashes cold and black, with no signs of life around. The wailing stopped abruptly as I stepped into the clearing, replaced by an oppressive silence that felt like a threat. I scanned the area, half expecting someone to leap out, but all I found was the desolation of the abandoned campsite. The wind picked up again, sending a chill down my spine, as if something was warning me to leave. So I did. I hurried back to the cabin, my mind racing with questions, my gut churning with unease. That night, sleep eluded me. The wailing returned, a sorrowful melody drifting through the cracks of the cabin. It was a sad song, haunting, and I felt its weight in my bones. I pulled the blanket tight around myself, staring out the window into the endless dark. My phone buzzed with a low battery warning, and I cursed under my breath, wishing I had brought a portable charger. All I could do was listen, the wailing a reminder that I was utterly alone on that forsaken island. The days dragged on, with each sunset bringing the same dreadful feelings. I ventured out again the next day, determined to confront my fears, but the woods seemed different, denser, as if they were closing in on me. I decided to mark my path with stones, a breadcrumb trail leading back to the safety of the cabin. I followed the sound of the wailing, which seemed to guide my steps deeper into the heart of the island, yet I didn't find solace, only growing dread. Eventually, I stumbled upon a small clearing with an old rotting tree stump at its center. There were strange carvings on its surface, lines and curves that danced in the fading light. As I knelt to inspect closer, the wailing ceased, replaced by an overwhelming sense of being watched. The air thickened, and a chill swept through me, causing my skin to prickle. I stood abruptly, looking around, convinced that something was lurking just out of sight. I rushed back to the cabin, the echo of the wailing growing louder in my mind, intertwined with the sound of my frantic heartbeat. That night I could hardly breathe, fear wrapping around me like a vice. The darkness felt suffocating, as if it wanted to consume me. I could no longer distinguish between the cries of the island and my own thoughts, both merging into a cacophony of despair. I tried to drown it out, but it seeped into my very being, making sleep impossible. The following morning I made the decision to leave. As I packed in a frenzy, I stumbled upon an old diary tucked under the bed, a relic of the cabin's previous occupant. The last entry sent chills through me. The woods know my name, I hear their wails, and they beckon me still. My skin crawled as I realized the wailing wasn't random. It was a summons, a call from something residing deep within the woods. I hurried out the door, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon me. As I made my way back through the woods, the wailing intensified, echoing all around me. It felt like the trees were alive, bending toward me, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. Panic rose in my throat as I stumbled through the underbrush. The path I'd marked vanished under the tangled roots and leaves. I ran blindly, heart racing, and reached the edge of the woods only to find my way blocked by darkness ahead of me. I turned back, only to find the trees had shifted, creating an entirely new labyrinth. As I yelled for help, my voice echoed back at me, mocking. The wailing transformed into laughter, a sinister sound that sent jolts of terror through my core. I turned again and saw the flickering light ahead, a ghostly shape amidst the trees. I sprinted toward it, praying it wasn't a trick, desperate for salvation, as shadows danced in my periphery. I broke through the underbrush and saw the cabin in the distance. Relief washed over me momentarily as I sprinted towards it, only to have that relief turn to dread as I neared. The door stood ajar, wide open as if welcoming me back in, but I only felt a fresh wave of fear. It wasn't just the wailing that had drawn me in, it was something far darker. I dared not cross the threshold. I stood frozen, unable to decide my next move. Suddenly, the wailing stopped. In that chilling silence, I heard a voice, soft yet commanding. "Stay with us. Your name is known." And in that moment, I felt the weight of all that isolation crush me. I turned and ran, sprinting toward the shore where the ferry had docked, praying that I wouldn't look back. The woods screamed in my absence, a furious chorus that chased me to the water's edge, clawing at my heels, desperate to pull me back into the embrace of darkness. I made it to the ferry, gasping for breath, my mind racing with despair. But once aboard, I dared to look back. The island loomed in the distance, ominous and foreboding, the wailing echoing once more in my ears. It felt like it was beckoning me, whispering my name, reminding me of the darkness that awaited my return. I knew that the woods would always remember me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the wailing would never end. In early July of 2023, I took a trip to a remote island off the coast of Washington State. My friends had always raved about how peaceful it was, a perfect getaway to recharge. I needed the break, and the idea of a quaint beachside cottage with a view of the ocean was too tempting to resist. So I booked a spot for 4 days, eager to immerse myself in the tranquil scenery and leave my worries behind. As I arrived, the island greeted me with a gentle breeze and the sound of waves lapping against the shore. The air was salty and invigorating, and I could see the outline of tall pines hugging the coastline. The cottage was adorable, a charming wooden structure with weathered shingles that seemed to blend into the landscape. It was a perfect spot to unwind, surrounded by nature and away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. I threw open the windows and let the ocean air fill the rooms, feeling the tension in my shoulders begin to melt away. The first 2 days passed blissfully, filled with beach walks and long evenings spent watching the golden sunsets. I often made my way down to the harbor, where fishermen brought in their daily catches. I enjoyed chatting with them, soaking in their stories about life on the island. But on the third day, something shifted. A storm rolled in from the west, dark clouds swallowing the bright sky. The fishermen were quick to pack up their boats, and I watched as they hurried off the docks, glancing nervously at the swelling sea. Feeling a sense of foreboding, I returned to the cottage. The wind howled through the trees, and a chill crept into the air. I closed all the windows tightly and turned on the small heater to take the edge off the coolness. However, the storm wasn't just a typical summer squall. It felt different, more alive. The trees swayed dangerously under its might, and I found myself glancing out the window, half expecting something to come slithering out of the darkened woods beyond. As the evening wore on, the storm intensified. Thunder rolled in deep, echoing across the island, and the rain came down in torrents, pounding on the roof with a fearsome intensity. I curled up with a book, trying to ignore the unease that clawed at my stomach. It was then that I thought I heard voices outside, faint but distinct, carried on the wind. I put the book down and leaned toward the window, straining to understand what they were saying, but the words were lost in the chaos of the storm. The voices grew louder, cutting through the storm, and I stood frozen, half listening. They sounded like a mix of laughter and despair, a haunting melody that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I was about to dismiss it as the storm's tricks when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the gravel path outside. Panic surged inside me as I glanced around the room, debating whether I should grab my phone or hide. The door rattled softly, and I held my breath. My heart raced as the footsteps moved closer to the door, and I thought about bolting out the back, but the voices just outside grew louder, more insistent. I could almost hear their words now, urging me to come outside. Someone knocked, gently at first, then harder. "Open up, let us in," the voices cried, sending a jolt of terror through my body. The way they called out felt familiar, like they knew me. I stumbled back, shaking my head as if it would dispel the growing horror behind me. Time stretched as I stood there, paralyzed with fear. But then I remembered something the fisherman had mentioned earlier in the week, a legend about a watcher, a spirit who haunted the island, waiting for someone to join its eternal vigil. I could feel my breath quickening, the air thickening with dread. With each knock, I fought the urge to answer, knowing that whatever was outside was not of this world. Suddenly, there was a loud crash as the wind flung one of the chairs outside against the wall, and I jumped back, heart pounding in my throat. The storm raged on, and the pounding on the door grew more feverish. "Let us in. We can help," the voices cried, growing desperate, almost pleading. My mind was spinning, and I found myself torn between wanting to escape the chaos behind me and fearing what awaited outside. I felt as though I was caught in a web, the threads tightening around me with every passing moment. As the storm peaked, I finally found my voice, shouting back, "Who are you?" My question hung in the air as the laughter died down, replaced by a chilling silence. But I wasn't prepared for the response. A low whisper floated through the door. "You know us, don't you? We've been waiting." The chill that swept through me was paralyzing. I staggered back, head spinning, as I realized the voices were familiar echoes of people I once knew, long gone. Panic and grief flooded my mind as I stumbled toward the window. I peered through the rain-soaked glass, and what I saw froze me in place. Shadows danced outside, but they weren't just shadows. They took on human forms, faces I recognized and loved. I gasped as they turned, their eyes hollow, mouths moving in that familiar laughter, beckoning me closer. "Join us, it's lonely out here," they whispered, the wind carrying their voices like a siren's call. The storm raged on, but all I could hear were those voices tugging at my heart and pulling me toward the door. I was trapped in that moment, swept away by a tide of memories and emotions. The door rattled once more, louder and more insistent than ever. "Open up, let us back in, we've missed you." The longing in their voices tugged deep within me, yet I also felt a wave of something sinister. I backed away, shaking my head, determined to resist. But the storm surged, a final roar of wind crashing against the cabin as I clutched my head, torn between two worlds. The finality of the moment hit as I screamed back, "I'm still here!" The pounding stopped abruptly, leaving only the sound of the storm outside. As I caught my breath, fear wrapped itself around me, squeezing tighter. It felt as if the very air in the cabin became heavy as I waited nervously for whatever came next. Did I truly escape their grasp, or would they return again? I felt the walls closing in, the dread palpable, waiting for the next knock that might shatter my reality once more. The storm eventually passed, but the unease lingered as I laid awake, watching the shadows stretch and shift across the walls. I know the legends are real, and that the Watcher is still out there, waiting for the next visitor to pull into its embrace. I departed the island the next morning, the early dawn light casting a gentle glow over the remnants of the night's horrors. But I can't shake the feeling that something followed me, lurking just beyond the veil of everyday life, ready to reach out when I least expect it. In late September 2023, looking to get away from the mundane, I took a trip to Cedar Cliff, an island well known among locals for its stunning cliffs overlooking the sea. I longed for the beauty of nature and the soothing sound of the waves crashing against the rocks. The vibrant foliage promised a picturesque view, perfect for my photography obsession. I found a quaint bed and breakfast that had a view of the cliffs, and I booked a room immediately, excited for my adventure. Arriving on the island on September 25th, I was taken in by the crisp air and the warm colors that surrounded me. The bed and breakfast was charming, a refurbished old house that creaked with history. The owner, an elderly woman named Martha, welcomed me with a warm smile and a plate of freshly baked cookies. As we chatted, I felt a growing unease as she mentioned the island's past, stories of sailors who had met their fate against the very cliffs I had come to admire. But I brushed off her tales, eager to explore the beauty around me. That evening, twilight cast long shadows across the cliffs as I ventured toward the edge, my camera in hand. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, waves crashing against the rocks far below. I could feel the cool breeze brushing against my face, the salty air filling my lungs. It was exhilarating. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a chill crept in. I snapped photo after photo, capturing the vibrant colors, transitioning to dark hues, but, strangely, the atmosphere shifted. The light seemed to dim unnaturally fast, making the shadows stretch and creep. As I focused on the cliff's edge, I thought I heard a low whisper, almost like a shiver in the wind. I turned, scanning the area, but there was nothing there, only the wind rustling the leaves. I decided to shake off the feeling and continued snapping photos, yet the whispers returned, growing louder. It sounded like someone was calling out, a distant voice mingling with the rush of the waves. My heart raced as a sense of foreboding washed over me. I turned away from the cliff to head back, but a sudden movement caught my eye in the corner. I looked and saw a figure standing near the edge. The figure was a shadow against the gathering darkness, indistinct but undeniably present. I squinted, feeling simultaneously drawn to and repulsed by the sight. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky and uncertain, the moment stretching painfully long. There was no response, only the sound of the crashing waves below. I took a cautious step forward, my camera at the ready, hoping to capture something before it vanished. But as I raised the lens, the figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows, leaving an unsettling emptiness in its wake. Startled, I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. I hurried back toward the bed and breakfast, a sense of urgency propelling my steps. As I arrived at the porch, Martha was sitting in a rocking chair, knitting by lantern light. She looked up, concern etched across her face. "Did you see her?" she asked cryptically. My curiosity piqued, I inquired. "See who?" She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Lady of the Cliffs. She appears to those who may follow her into the depths." My skin crawled at her words. I had brushed off her earlier stories as mere ghost tales, but something in her eyes made me rethink everything. I did my best to assure her I was fine and retreated to my room, feeling unsettled. The night was long, with the wind howling outside, almost echoing the whispers I had heard earlier. I tossed and turned, the image of the shadowy figure creeping back into my mind, as well as Martha's warning reverberating in my thoughts. The next day, I decided to hike along the cliffside trail, determined to confront whatever hauntings lingered in the air. The colors of the foliage surrounded me like a comforting embrace, yet fear still clung to my thoughts. There was a beautiful peace in nature, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I approached the sharp cliff edge, I again heard that whispering, faint yet urgent, as if begging me to listen closer. I felt dizzy, as if the very ground below me was shifting, and I had to take a step back. Suddenly, I felt a chill, the air thick with something unnameable. I turned around to flee, but caught a glimpse of her, the Lady of the Cliffs, standing at the exact spot my mind had conjured her. Her features were indistinct, but she wore a flowing gown that seemed to be woven from the mist itself. The hair billowed around her like the ocean spray, and her eyes, a void of darkness, saw into my very soul. I froze, my blood running cold as she extended a hand towards me, inviting yet terrifying. I couldn't move, terror rooting me to the spot. "Join me," she whispered, her voice ringing in my ears like a dreadful hymn. "Feel the freedom in the depths beneath the waves." In that moment, the whispers crescendoed around me, a cacophony of lost souls urging me to surrender. I felt a pull, as if something dark within me responded to her call. I stumbled back from the edge, shaking my head, fighting against the allure of her haunting presence. The moment shattered as I turned to run, knowing that to stay there would mean losing myself. The lady vanished as quickly as she appeared, leaving only the cold, empty air behind. I raced back down the trail, barely able to catch my breath, heart racing with every step. I burst into the bed and breakfast, panting, eyes darting around for any sign of Martha. "Have you seen her?" I gasped as soon as I reached the living room. Martha's face paled, and she closed the knitted blanket tightly around her. "I warned you, didn't I? The Cliffs hold on to their secrets tightly," she whispered, her voice quivering. I could sense her fear now,